later down the line you end up having some sort of bacteria that needs to be dealt with, none of the antibiotics are going to work because of all of this GMO food that you've been eating. So there's certain impacts that people don't realize more than just chronic health.
Even from the toxin standpoint, a lot of toxins actually hide in the like an animal fat. So if you're eating animals that are, that come from like industrial farms that are pumped, again, like I said, with antibiotics, growth hormones, and are like consistently fed a GMO grain feed, which is instead of them eating grass, they'll be fed like soy or corn, which are genetically modified. And these genetically modified foods and the chemicals that are used on these kind of crops, they embed in the animal fat. So when we eat the animal fat, it comes to we're consuming it, and there's actually a process called bioaccumulation, which is where it accumulates in the fat. And then there's something called biomagnification, when you eat the animal fat and you're like, for example, us humans eating the animal, it actually gets magnified in our bodies, and it also gets stored in our bodies. And also it's like very dangerous, for example, if you're a breastfeeding mom, because you're giving all of that accumulation to your baby through the breast milk.
Is this better?
Yes, this is much better.
Okay. I moved on upstairs and if you can't fall asleep then.
Oh no.
Yeah, because he hasn't fallen asleep yet, so I was trying to do it downstairs so that I don't wake him up, but it's okay.
Yeah, I think soon to know, maybe the whatever network was bad مثلا.
Yeah, probably my Wi-Fi is not as good downstairs.
Yeah. Should we?
That's okay. That's all good. So let's start.
Okay.
I see hi everyone. I see waves. I'm just like.
Yeah, do you think we should ask them በአማርኛ or በእንግሊዝኛ እንድናደርገው, or do you think we should just do it in English, like you said?
I don't know. I feel because I don't know what the percentage of your followers look like, but mine are not only Abisha, or like
Yeah. I mean, my mostly Abisha ናቸው, ግን I mean, since we're doing it on your page, I'm totally fine doing it either way. ስለዚህ ለኔ it's
I don't know. I think it might be more accessible if we do it in English, and then like I said, if they have any questions about Maria,
all right.
yeah, and if they have any questions, like if something is not clear, let us know, and then we'll clarify. Like, don't be shy.
Yeah.
Okay. So Hiwote, like, tell us why you got into, you're passionate about environmental toxins, and how did you become so passionate about it?
I guess Medamera, let me introduce myself.
Yeah.
For those that
I thought that would be that. I thought you would in your answer. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, fair enough. My name is Hiwote, and so I'm what do you call it? I'm an environmental health educator, and I don't know. I guess how to describe myself. It's weird, but anyways, kind of how I got into like environmental health was through a personal experience. First, it's kind of like I always say, like I made a full circle to like environmental health and kind of my passion, because when I was 21, I found a lump in my right breast, and that was a very, very scary time. I had made a video about it a while ago. But anyways, at that point, like at first I thought, like someone who was a nursing student who was a friend of mine was like, oh, like maybe it's a cyst, don't worry about it or anything. And then I went to the clinic and they said it's hard, so they don't know if it's a cyst or not. So I had to go see a radiologist and go through like the process of what I guess many people who get diagnosed with cancer go through. And that was very, very scary for me, because I was an international student here. I didn't have any of my family nearby. And even just the thought of having cancer at age, I think I was still 20, or yeah, I was actually 20. At 20 was just unimaginable because, you know, I felt like I had my whole life ahead of me and that was it. And at that time, we have always been taught that like cancer is genetic, right? I didn't have any family history of like any family member who had, you know, who's had any type of cancer. So I was like, how could it be? So I remember asking the doctor who was performing my biopsy, you know, what is the youngest age that you've had, like the youngest cancer patients you've had? And I remember her telling me 26. And I was like, what? Like, because at that time I didn't, so this was like 7, 8 years ago, at least for me, I had never heard of anyone who had cancer without having any family, you know, history. But anyways, thank God it was not cancer. It was kind of a very common type of breast cyst called fibroadenoma. But when I was reading about it, it says it's very common among Black women. Like almost 9, it's like a very like ridiculous percentage of Black women in the US, especially, they get diagnosed with, you know, that type of cyst. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And then I kept asking them, like, what causes it? Because I don't have any family history and all of that. And they said they don't know. So for me, that answer was not good enough because I was like, there has to be something that's causing it, because I feel like sometimes we think of certain things like, oh, it's normal, you know, or it's common, and like, but common does not equal normal. You know, we got to find like why it's happening. So for me, I was on a quest, like I was reading like everything that I could find about like what causes this. And I came across a study that actually only 10 to 15% of cancer is genetic. You know, the rest of cancers are like 80 to 85% of cancers are caused by environmental factors. And I was like, okay, this is insane. Like, I had no idea that, you know, such a huge percentage of cancer was caused by, you know, other factors than genetics. So one of the things I came across were like things in personal care products, like, you know, antiperspirants, like, you know, which is kind of your typical deodorant. But obviously I don't want to go into detail today about what that is, but I kind of found like, you know, those things actually contribute to, you know, breast tumors and things like that. So that's kind of when, like, you know, what is it, a light bulb in my head went, and I was like, oh crap, like we're living in a very toxic environment. Because I think a lot of people, when you say environmental health, they think of like climate change or something very, you know, big that we don't really have control of ourselves. But there's so much like, and even our day-to-day lives that we're exposed to that really, you know, affects our health negatively or positively. And that's kind of how it was. And but, you know, eventually I had kind of stopped thinking about like that kind of like environmental health for a while, because I always wanted to be in public health and I was passionate about infectious disease. And I was like, I was in grad school and doing all of that. And I remember we had to take a class called toxicology. It came up again where, you know, we were taught how like the FDA does not regulate these things. And I remember, wow, like I thought all these products on the shelves were, you know, were safe for us, like, but that, you know, that was not the case. So anyways, but especially after I got pregnant, I did a lot of researching about the things I wanted to use, you know, on my child and things like that. And that's really how I came like to, I feel like that full circle, that's kind of what I want my focus to be, because like we don't have control of, you know, climate change or things like that. At least as individuals, we don't. So I was like, I want to focus on something where I feel like I can help individuals make change in their lives and improve their health, instead of just focusing on the big problems. And it doesn't mean like I'm ignoring, you know, the big problems, but I feel like kind of through educating, you know, one person at a time and like empowering one person at a time, we can address like the bigger issues kind of together. So it's a long answer, but that's kind of, you know, how I got, you know, passionate. So it's very personal to me. So that's kind of how it is.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like a lot of people that get into like this involved with alternative health, environmental health, it's often when it becomes personal, like something happens to you personally, or you've been in a personal journey that sort of, you know, puts literally, it's like the switch to the light bulb and you're like, oh wow, like this is like for me, I think, well, first let me introduce myself for the followers that are from Hiwote's side. So my name is Kalkidan Tesfu. I actually got into nutrition very recently. So I mean, I can say recently as in I started the program recently, but um, sorry, my husband's like, why are you up here? The connection was not working downstairs, so I had to come up. So I started right around the time that I was pregnant. So October 2018 is when I started my program. But what led to me getting into nutrition was way, way before that. I personally have had to, well, not have had to, but I've literally yo-yoed like in terms of weight loss for as long as I can remember. The first time I lost a lot of weight was when I was, I think 16, 17, probably 17, where I lost like 80 pounds. So starting then, yeah, starting then till now, I've probably lost and gained like 300 pounds. Like
Oh my
lost it
God.
and
Yeah,
then gained
lost
it
it.
and then, yeah,
That's
like
a lot.
so yeah, so like for me, I've probably tried like all the diets there are out there, and so like food and nutrition was always something that I was always into and was always exploring, but for the weight loss more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when we started trying for a baby, which yeah, Hiwote can read that because when we started trying for a baby, was when I realized that certain environmental toxins, the type of food that we eat, organic versus conventional, and grass-fed versus whatever you buy, whatever meat you get from the grocery store that's on sale or whatnot, um, made a difference with our hormones and
Mm-hmm.
like you've seen the video that I've made. I'm guessing some of you would have seen the infertility journey video that I've been putting up on YouTube. So
Mm-hmm.
with that is when when I started to think about nutrition in terms of clean eating and healthy eating and more than just for weight loss. And yeah, and then pregnancy itself does a whole lot to you. I mean, like like Hiwote said,
Yeah.
I think when we have other people that we have to make sure are well nourished, we
Mm-hmm.
really are even more careful as to what we put in our fridge and our cupboards and our mouths. So yeah, I guess that was the extra push also, even though I signed up for the program right before I found out I was pregnant. So yeah, that's how I got into this. Before that, I studied psychology. Um, I was actually trying to go to medical school when I was younger, and then I even did the MCAT, and I didn't end up pursuing it further. When I like, because it's really hard to get into in Canada, and
Mm-hmm.
like there's probably like eight universities that offer the program with like millions of people.
Oh
So
wow.
I tried like, and I was so specific about the school I wanted to go to. I only applied to one school, and when I didn't get in, I was like, and then I applied for
That's
a
not.
master's program in psychology. So I clearly was not that into it. And so I have my master's in developmental psych,
Oh
but I
wow.
did not work in that field either. I was working providing patient support program to patients who have autoimmune conditions, cancer, things of that nature. So
Yeah. But
that's
it's
that's
kind of led
basically
you to
me.
where you are. So
Yeah,
the autoimmune stuff and like all that stuff. So I feel like kind of what is it, our personal experiences and even things we experienced like working in different fields, I feel like they always kind of
yeah,
everything is connected. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that's basically us. And now we're going to go
mhm.
into our topic for today. Yes, we
Mhm.
will save this live, and thank you so much. We will save this live. I have people who asked me who are in Ethiopia who are probably sleeping and on dream number 3 right
Oh,
now,
okay.
who
Okay.
asked who asked that we save it. So I will save it and I will put it up. If I can, I'll try to put it up on YouTube as well, but I'll definitely do IGTV. But yeah, so we're gonna get into our topic.
Okay.
We will try to cover all of the different things that we have thought of for you. We didn't get that many questions, but we'll try to cover what we can. And if you have any questions, please
Yeah.
write it in the comments section or in the question and answer section, and then we will get to it at the end just to make sure that we cover everything. All right. So, Hiwote, do you want to start with organic, since it's mostly toxin related? Like why organic versus conventional, like vegetables, fruits?
Yeah, so obviously, like, this is such a broad topic, so we might have to come back to it if you guys feel like this at least first live is helpful, because it's such a big topic. I think maybe I want to start with the thought that a lot of people have, including myself. Before I started buying organic, I used to think, I was like, okay, this is like an overkill. It's so expensive, especially I used to live in Minnesota, since like how far the food travels, like the distance makes it much more expensive. Organic produce was, oh my gosh, extremely expensive, like 3-4 times as much as like buying conventional. So I remember thinking, like, because we had family members who were buying organic, and I was like, yeah, you guys are crazy. Like, how do you afford this? Because it's very expensive, which we know that. But for me, and I remember then I live in Utah right now, which is like organic food is much more affordable. It's easily accessible. And that's kind of when we fully made that transition. But kind of for me, like, deep down, I knew, like, okay, there must be something good of like why, a lot more people are switching to organic. Obviously, in Ethiopia, like at least before, when, growing up, like a lot of things didn't need to be labeled organic or non-organic because everything was grown organically. So organic essentially means like it's grown in the most natural environment possible without any, chemicals, herbicides, or pesticides. And that's kind of what organic means, I guess, for people. And then, we'll go into like some of, the pasture raised and all that kind of detail to explain to people like what that means and what it is. But for me, then I started learning about, GMOs and like, and then like non-GMO. And I was like, okay, there's all these labels. What do they mean? What are they? And I started looking at it, obviously there are foods that are genetically modified, which means like their natural state is altered to either be pesticide resistant or, to do something that I guess people like the industry desires them to be. And then I started learning about some of the chemicals that were being used. And, one of the main ones that I first learned about was glyphosate, which is a lot of the GMO crops that we like wheat and, soybeans and a lot of, those kind of like, I guess, I don't know how to turn off like my message notification because I'm using my husband's phone, but sorry about that, guys. But like, so for me, that's kind of where I started learning about it. And I saw how much it disrupts our hormones, how it affects our gut bacteria and all of those things. And even sometimes kind of like, but the justification is like, we need to feed the world. Like, we just don't have enough food to feed the world. So we got to put all these pesticides. So for me, kind of became like, what is like the, the cost benefit kind of analysis, because when you're putting all of these like chemicals on the food, you are affecting so much of like, that obviously the nature of the food when you're genetically modifying them. And then all these chemicals you're putting are absorbed in our bodies. And I think one thing I want to talk about is like, for example, a lot of us think, I don't know if there's been a lot where people say, well, if you can peel off the peel of the fruit or something, that is beneficial for some fruits and vegetables, but they actually apply a lot of pesticides, and herbicides are applied systematically to the seed. So they are growing with that seed. So like whether we peel it off or not, if we're buying conventional, like we're exposing ourselves to these chemicals. And especially, our kids who are developing, our kids, like, when you're pregnant, all of that, like it just affects our body in a very like, in a great way, obviously not in a good way, but like it affects our body greatly. So for me, that's kind of where I was like, okay, I really need, so this is not just about the cost, you know, like, because at the end of the day, like you might be paying premium like for organic, but what benefits are you getting? Because you're really preventing a lot of health problems down the line by eating organic. So you're and it's just the amount of toxins that are on like conventional food are a lot. So I know it's very overwhelming for people to be like, well, I can't just buy organic all, you know, all at once, which was me at, you know, at one point. So kind of what I did was the environmental working group has this clean, I think maybe you had posted it, the, what is it, clean 15, dirty dozen and clean 15 list, where they kind of list, I think every year they kind of test different types of produce for the type of, the amount of pesticides and chemicals they have. And then, you know, they kind of list the ones with the least possible like pesticides and chemicals on the clean 15, and then the worst ones with like the highest level of chemicals in the dirty dozen. So usually if you want to minimize, you know, your like toxicity from like buying organic or not being able to afford, you know, organic food, then I would always buy what's on the dirty dozen organic. And then, you know, if all the clean 15 and others, then you can try buying conventional. And there have been studies where, you know, that have shown actually like eating organic food, even like 80 to 90% or no, actually is it 60% organic food like throughout, I think for 5 days is where they did the studies, significantly reduces the amount of pesticides in the urine of the people they tested. So it's not just like, oh, you know, it's not just us saying, oh, organic is just better. There are studies that prove that they definitely have, you know, health benefits. So that's why I would say like, but it's an investment on our health, and that's kind of how we have to look at it, because we might be paying more money right now, but we are saving a lot in the long term, because chronic diseases are not cheap. They're expensive. Like, you know, no, really, that's the truth, because having diabetes, having, you know, high blood pressure, like, and a lot of these other things that come with, you know, other complications too, they're not cheap. And, you know, mentally, financially, like physically, they're just very taxing in every aspect. So for me, when you look at it that way, then it becomes worth it to kind of buy organic, and why you would want to switch to organic.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's true. When it comes to GMOs, actually, there are also a few things that most people are not aware of. Is like for certain, let's say for soy, they add like the genes of a Brazil nut in the GMO soy. And so people who would normally not be allergic to soy, because they're not allergic to soy, may have an allergy to the nut and may actually react to the soy. So like there might be reactions and allergic reactions that you're not aware, that you don't realize why you're all of a sudden reacting to soy when you were not reacting to it before, or like maybe you had organic soy before. And so like this is just one example. They because they use genes of other organisms into the production of these seedlings, there could be more allergy, and also because they make these seeds bacteria, like they make them antibiotic resistant, basically. Like they make it so that these seeds are able to grow with all of the pesticides and herbicides and everything that they're dousing it with. They make the seeds resistant to all of that, right? So what ends up happening to us when we take in these GMO crops, which if you're eating corn, most likely it's GMO unless you're getting it from like a local farm and you know what they're planting, but there's certain things that is mostly GMO. And so when you're eating these things, like when you're eating corn, for example, you are taking in this antibiotic resistance, and you may become resistant in the long run. Maybe not right now, but let's say when you've been eating GMOs for, I don't know, like 20, 30 years, and later down the line you end up having some sort of bacteria that needs to be dealt with, none of the antibiotics are going to work because of all of this GMO food that you've been eating. So there's certain impacts that people don't realize, more than just chronic health, like more than just inflammation. Like there's things that GMO could really have an impact on our health in different ways. And also, I also just wanted to mention, for organic food, although the nutritional value of the food may not be vastly different, there is still some difference, because the soil, the health of the soil makes such an impact on the health of the vegetables or the fruits. So there would be a difference in vitamins and minerals because the health of the soil of a conventional crop, which is being grown with pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers of all type, would not have the same amount of nutrients than the organic produce that's being grown using compost and manure, because there would be more antioxidants in that soil, there would be more beneficial microbes in that soil. So the vegetables and the fruits are also going to be that much more nutritious. Even though it's not that much of a difference, there's still a difference. And the last point I want to make in terms of like these vegetables and fruits and grains is the importance of eating things as a whole, like whole foods, right? So the reason why, it's important to like when you eat grains, including the whole grain, is that helps you with fiber. Our bodies also recognize that food as a whole, not its process. Like the whole reason why raw milk is healthier it has to do with this as well, because our body is used to having the food with the enzyme. So when you're consuming raw milk, you're getting the lactose and the lactase. So you don't have any issues with digesting it because you have the enzyme to break it down. But when you're consuming pasteurized milk, you're only getting the lactose. So your body has to have enough lactase to break it down. And that's where a lot of people end up being lactose intolerant, with over time of you taking in all of this lactose without the lactase. And if you're predisposed, then you can develop lactose intolerance. So just, the importance of whole foods is also
that's true, because I feel like sometimes people will be like, oh, I'm eating organic, but people are eating organic junk, like a lot of organic processed stuff. And a lot of times I think even with organic, we have to be very careful, especially, like you said, like eating whole foods is like our safest kind of like our safety net in that sense, because sometimes you'll have organic food, but then if you read the labels, you'll be shocked like the amount of things they contain. If you look at like organic cereal or a lot of things. So for me, like it's much better for us to eat whole foods. I mean, obviously nutritionally, it's like incomparable to the processed foods, but also just in terms of minimizing the toxins we're putting in our body, it's very essential. So
and that's the other thing. Like the labels sometimes can be so deceiving. Like the importance is that you're eating something that you could have grown or you could have raised. Like if it takes machines to create that food, then it's organic versus non-organic is beyond that, right? So we have to try to eat as less processed as possible. I understand it takes time, and I understand that like Hiwote explained, that it costs more to eat cleaner and healthier food, but it's about prioritization and
But I mean, I think one thing I want to emphasize too is like it's kind of how we look at it, because I think a lot of people, at least people who follow like kind of the American diet, are very like, oh, it's actually processed food is actually much more expensive when you guys look at it, because even though it may look like, oh yeah, like it's accessible, it's easy, obviously like it's expensive again because it's harming your health and it's going to be expensive in the long term. But also when you actually, even with like conventional food, if you start buying just like tomatoes or something instead of a canned tomato, like you'll see how much cheaper it is. Like how much you're paying for the raw material is much cheaper than like you buying the processed food. But someone was asking what's whole food. Whole food means the food in its natural state. So meaning like instead of, like I said, buying a tomato that is in a can, just buying the tomato itself is kind of what we're talking about, like just kind of the foods as they are instead of them being processed to be something else. All right.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Yeah, that way you're also saving yourself from all of the chemicals and all of the heat and everything that was put into it to process it to that form, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to move on to meat? I'm trying to make sure that we get through as much as we can, and you know.
Yeah. So for me personally, maybe I'll mention a little bit. The first thing I noticed was, I'm sure a lot of people have watched like so many documentaries about like how the animals are treated and stuff on like kind of an, you know, industrial type of farming. So for me, at the time when I kind of learned of this, I was like, okay, like I don't know where to buy, you know, like obviously, what is it, meat that's not adulterated, I should call it, like meat that's kind of, you know, that's grass-fed, or that's just in, you know, the most organic form. So for me, I wanted to avoid meat to the best of my abilities, because at that time I didn't know like where to find it. But I think now looking back, it's just I didn't have the language to find what it was called, you know, or what to search for, because I was like I just, I was like, I didn't know what it's called, you know, because everything you find at the grocery store, it says it's meat, but it's all like, you know, from the industrial kind of farms with, you know, what Al mentioned earlier with, I mean, they're pumped with a ton of antibiotics and growth hormones and things like that, that really, really mess with our body and our health and even the environment. So for me, essentially was like, okay, I need to avoid meat completely, which was not the best solution. It's kind of, at that time, I was just doing, you know, like I was trying to do better with the information that I had, and that's what I did. But eventually, the Ethiopian, like the Habesha stores that we were going to, actually imported their meat from Australia. And so, like for the most part, not everything, but like a lot of Australian meat is, oh my God. My baby's freaking out because she's, I'm not opening the door. Yeah, I can tell because she was like bumping on the on the door. But anyways, but you know, but at that time, like I said, I didn't know better, so you know, was trying to avoid that. But then I found out that okay, like a lot of Australian meat is actually grass fed and it's way less processed than the US. So I kind of started buying that. But then eventually, when we moved to Utah, like literally 7 minutes away from us, like there's a farm store that sells like grass-fed meat, grass-fed and grass-finished. So that means like the cows are grazing as much as possible, like during when the weather is necessary. And then I think they eat hay, like which is dried grass, when it's colder. And you know, nutritionally, that you'll tell us, but even from the toxin standpoint, a lot of toxins actually hide in the like an animal fat. So if you're eating animals that are, you know, that come from like industrial farms that are pumped, again, like I said, with antibiotics, growth hormones, and are like consistently fed a GMO grain feed, which is instead of them eating grass, they'll be fed like soy or corn, which are genetically modified. And these you know, genetically modified foods and the chemicals that are used on these kind of crops, they embed in the animal fat. So when we eat the animal fat, it comes to like, you know, we're consuming it. And there's actually a process called bioaccumulation, which is where it accumulates in the fat. And then there's something called biomagnification, when you eat the animal fat and you're like, for example, us humans eating the animal, it actually gets magnified in our bodies and it also gets stored in our bodies. And also it's like very dangerous, for example, if you're a breastfeeding mom, because you're giving all of that accumulation to your baby through the breast milk. So obviously this is not like to scare people and be like, oh my gosh, you know, like it's all, you know, it's I don't want to scare people, because sometimes like, it pushes people to the complete direction. It's just kind of to empower to empower you guys to know so that you can make better choices. So that's kind of from the toxin side. That's why you should eat, you should try to eat pasture raised or like grass fed, preferably 100% grass fed, because sometimes they'll say grass fed and 60% of the time the animals would be grazing, and then they'll still supplement them with GMO feeds. So you don't want that. So if possible, go for grass fed and grass finished or 100% grass fed type of meats when it comes to like red meat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was a lot of information. For the nutritional side, as to why you should choose grass-fed or pasture-raised foods, is that first, grain-fed meat is actually higher in omega-6, and omega-6 normally we need there's the specific ratio that we need of omega-3 to omega-6. So when we're taking in too much omega-6, then we're throwing off that ratio, and the standard American diet, or the non-mindful diet, normally has a lot of omega-6. So all of the vegetable oils that people use is filled with omega-6. A lot of the fish that you eat, unless you're eating wild caught fish, there's a lot of omega-6. So you have to be, instead of supplementing omega-3 through supplements, by eating grass-fed meat and wild caught fish, we're helping balance off that ratio omega-3 to omega-6, because omega-3 is the anti-inflammatory essential fatty acid, while the omega-6 is very inflammatory. So that could lead to a whole bunch of chronic conditions. And also, like Hiwote explained, the meat or the animals that are fed GMO soy, GMO corn, which is their main feed, by the way, if they're like industrial or conventional, those animals are gonna get fat quickly, and that's the reason why they also feed them that, is because they can sell them quicker. They can, their meat is ready quickly, and they're fatter, and their fat holds on to all these toxins. So they're higher in calorie as well because they're fatter. The grass-fed meat is leaner and it's more tender. The other thing that Hiwote didn't mention that I want to point out is a lot of the meat that you buy in grocery stores, they are tenderized. So they tenderize them with chemicals or with salt to make them more palatable and more tender, because mostly grain-fed meat is not tender. And so that's another thing you have to be careful. It's not just their feed. What else? And those that are grass-fed are higher in omega-3, they're higher in CLA, higher in vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D, B vitamins. So yeah, there's a lot more to it in terms of even nutrition. And lastly, for those of you who have not seen my last video on the infertility journey and what we were eating and whatnot, I had explained the importance of avoiding soy when it comes to hormonal balance or thyroid conditions. And so all of these animals that are not grass-fed are fed soy. And the soy that they're eating is also going to disrupt your hormonal balance, because it mimics estrogen, like the phytoestrogen in soy mimics estrogen in our bodies, and it throws off our hormonal balance. So, there's all of these things that are, hidden behind that grain-fed meat that you see at the grocery store. And trust me, I used to buy that meat. Like, I literally switched to grass-fed, I think around the time when I was pregnant. Before that, I was eating whatever meat was available at the grocery store, and I used to actually look for sales, and I used to price match. And like, now, I mean, there's still literally, now there are some, yes, we'll get to oil near the end. Now there are, and if we don't, remind me, now we literally get our meat from farmers, and that's the best thing you can do, because I still get grass-fed meat from a grocery store when I run out. But ideally, because they can use that label willy-nilly, like they can say grass-fed when, like she explained, it could have just been grass finished, but they can say grass-fed on there. You can sort of tell by the meat if it's marbled, like if there's fat marbling on the meat, it's likely not fully grass-fed. Fully grass-fed meat doesn't really marble. But
Yeah,
when
that's
you're
true.
getting it from a
Actually, now
farm,
that you say
yeah,
it, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But when you're getting it from a farm, I mean, that's a small family farm. They're not gonna, there's no benefit in them lying to you. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that's what we usually do. And if you're in the Toronto area and you want to know where I get my meat, I mean, I can give you a few different places that I've tried. They
Yeah,
deliver, you have to just order a certain amount, and it's not that
yeah.
expensive. It's actually cheaper than like buying meat from a butcher. It's more expensive than a grocery store, but it's not more expensive than like these Ethiopian places where you get your meat. So
Mm-hmm.
just reach out to me if you're in
Yeah.
Toronto.
Yeah, and we can try, and
Yeah.
if people are interested, maybe we can put like kind of resources where people can learn, in more detail about this um and stuff like that. But also like at least even in the US, there are a lot of websites and kind of farmer coalitions where you can go search your state and find specific farmers if you want to get raw milk or get like grass-fed, grass-finished beef. So that's it. I know someone had asked about what is it, seafood, which is obviously you've kind of touched on it, where like it's when possible eat what is it, eat wild
Wild caught.
fish as much as possible, because again, like still the oceans are polluted, so like the what is it, even wild caught fish is not like, it's not pure, it's not free from toxins, but it is extremely lower in toxins compared to farm raised, because with farm raised fish actually like the way they raise them, obviously it's not in a natural environment, but a lot of fish get sick and die. So for that reason, they will use a ton of antibiotics, a ton of pesticides, and I mean a lot of chemicals that are like really, really toxic to us. And with kind of the process I explained to you guys earlier with the biomagnification, so the bigger the fish gets, because they're eating all the toxins in the small fish, that toxin keeps accumulating and accumulating, and by the time it reaches us, if they're farm raised, even like, or even if it's wild caught and it's a much, much bigger fish, the level of toxins we accumulate is higher. So for me, kind of the things that we eat on the regular are, salmon it's good. You can eat it a couple of times a week. Sardines are really good. I don't eat tuna at all, not because because the mercury levels tuna are really big fish. So because of the process that I told you guys, they accumulate a ton of mercury, but also there's a lot more other pesticides and like PCBs, other types of chemicals that are like really bad for our health, that they have accumulated in the tuna meat. So I don't do that. And then like things like sharks and stuff, which I don't assume that many of us eat, but just like really bigger fish and kind of not stuff that we eat, I would avoid, because of the chemicals again. And even Al has explained that like the nutritional value is also far too low. And I know tilapia is something probably many of us love, at least maybe as Habeshas, like that's
We grew up
something
eating.
we grew up eating, and I love it. But the difference in our countries is like, it's not farmed, it's wild, it's not nutritionally that like superior, like it's not the greatest fish in terms of nutrition. But in the US and Canada, it's I think it's 100% farmed. So I would also avoid tilapia like to the best of my abilities, because it's farm raised, and again nutritionally it's not the greatest because it's a filter feeder, so it's not like the best type of fish. So that's kind of what is it, my kind of what I want to mention on
Fish.
yeah,
Yeah, I
someone
actually
said,
have
yeah,
I
go
have a
ahead, I'm
little
gonna
chart.
read some of the questions. Yeah.
Okay. I have a little chart actually on my feed I will share after this of like the different fishes and which is the least toxic versus most toxic when it comes to like mercury and PCBs and
Yep.
so I will like share it after this so you can check my stories for that so that you don't have to look in my hundreds of posts. Yeah, so for fish, they're naturally made to eat like little fishes and algae.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's their natural diet. But those that are being
Mm-hmm.
farmed are again being fed soy and corn
Yep.
because cheap. And believe it or not, salmon are actually fed chicken feathers. Like they make a meal from chicken feathers and they feed them to salmon. I don't know for what reason. And of course, antibiotic because they all get sick and they don't really
Yep.
want them to, resist any sort of bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not naturally pink. The farmed ones that you buy are actually fed some sort of chemical to make them pink.
Yep, that's
So
true. Yeah, that's something, yeah, I forgot to mention. Yep,
the
that's
wild
great.
ones that you see are usually pink. Like they're like, you can tell even by color whether it's wild caught. Um, So yeah, and it's more omega-6 than omega-3. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
those are the reasons for fish. And like Hiwote said, I don't eat tuna. I stopped eating tuna before I got pregnant. I wasn't really
Yeah.
into tuna to
I
begin with,
gave up
but
on sushi. Sushi was like, oh, I used to love sushi, and that's,
yeah,
yeah, a whole different conversation for another day because, eating raw fish has other type of risks. But um, let's answer a few questions here about just kind of, so can we eat salmon and sardines every day? I wouldn't eat it every day, but me personally, a few times a week is good because sardines, as much as they're smaller fish and they're healthier, they're still kind of out of their size. They are the most polluted by PCBs. I don't know what like the name of them, but they are chemicals that affect our hormones and things like that. But the benefits of eating sardines outweighs the toxins that we're being exposed to because when you have like enough omega-3s and like kind of anti-inflammatory like nutrients that you need, it actually helps your body detoxify. So the benefits outweigh the risks. So for me, I do eat them like a few times a week, and like my daughter loves them, so like we'll make it in like different types of things. And so I don't eat them every day, but they're okay to eat, I think, at least 3 to 4 times a week, is my understanding. Kali, if you have more to add.
yeah, sardines I think are okay, but salmon I would definitely not eat every day. Um, because I mean, they're not that big of fish, but you still don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, and the amount of Um, I mean, it's omega-3, but there's still quite a bit of omega-6 in there as well. And I wouldn't eat it. I wouldn't eat it every day.
Okay. And then someone said, what about shrimp? So shrimp also, you want to make sure where, you want to know where they're sourced, and also you want to buy, what is it? Like, the unshelled it's in the most natural, I guess, state, because a lot of shrimp that you'll see, they're like cooked, or and some of them are actually farmed too. So you want to make sure they're wild caught, and also sometimes even the places where they're wild caught, um depends, because a lot of Asian countries, like for example like Vietnam and stuff, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but kind of like the research shows like kind of their ponds or whatever where the shrimp are, or the ocean, wherever they get them, is kind of like a lot more polluted. So you kind of want to know where it's sourced from, and I will try to share the resource of like which countries are kind of the best to get shrimp from. But definitely, like the same as other fish, they have to be wild. And for me, I've actually, like, it's been a very long time since we had shrimp, and I got it like a couple of days ago, and I was like, I hate the taste. I don't want to eat this anymore. But if you like it, that's my advice would be, that's kind of your best bet. I don't know if you have anything to add, Kali.
No, you said it all. In terms of nutrition, there isn't really much of a difference. But
Yeah.
I make sure that my child, my toddler, I introduced it just to introduce it because it was an allergen, but
Yep.
it's like his favorite fish now. So
Oh, really? No,
it's,
my daughter, I think because I didn't introduce it to her earlier, like she ate one bite and then the second, like she was spitting it, I think because the texture was really weird for her.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
and
don't
then,
I don't eat shrimp, so like I
yeah,
make it just
yeah.
for him, and I buy wild wild Argentinian shrimp that I
Yeah,
find at
I think
Costco.
yeah, I think those are better. I mean, but I'll check and share the resource. But someone else, maybe this is like for you, which I guess we can both answer, but probably for you, 8 months baby, which kind of fish should I eat?
For baby, that's you can do salmon. White fish is good too. I mean, wild caught, but you can do salmon, you can do cod, um, haddock. But
Even
normally
the
they
sardine.
don't really like sardines too. Yeah, sardines too.
Yeah.
They don't really like the taste of white fish, I find. Mine doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't really, I mean, I eat it for the benefits. I don't really like the taste of white fish either, to be honest. But, sardines are good if they're willing to take it. Mine didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean
And
they're
yeah,
kind of fishy, so it's like it's but salmon definitely too. What that's what I introduced my daughter, and
yeah,
she loved it because I think kind of like the texture is really like it's great for kids. Make sure if it has bones to like to kind of search for the bones and remove it, especially if it's an 8 months old. But for me, that's kind of what I introduced, and taste wise, nutrition wise, I think that's a great one to start with. And if they
yeah,
take sardines or anything like that, that's a plus
yeah.
too.
If they take sardines, sardines are really good. It's also because you basically eat the whole thing, so it's also great for brain development. Um,
Yeah,
The other
yeah.
thing that maybe not, yeah, I wouldn't do this before a year, but after a year old, you can also do caviar. So I did caviar as well,
I've
which is
never
salmon
done
egg.
that even for myself.
Oh, I didn't. My baby, not for me. I'm telling
You're
you,
good.
my
I'm
baby's more
like,
adventurous than I am. He loves his caviar. So wild caught caviar, salmon roe. So salmon eggs, basically, is what it is. Um,
yeah, so there's a lot of questions on the fish, so I would say let's address them and we can move on. How about crab? Crab, you have to be careful again. Like, you have to know, like, if it's actual crab, because there's fake crab meat or imitation crab meat, they call it. I honestly have not looked into it of like the details of how toxic it is and stuff, but anything that's like genetically modified or, it's not natural, I avoid. So I would say like you have to. So for me, those kind of fish, since I don't really have access to, I don't eat that much, so I can't speak to them. But again, you kind of have to make sure it's actual crab and not the fake crab because they do sell those. Do you have anything to say?
no, I don't know anything
Okay.
about crab.
Okay, and then when you say sardines, you mean canned from? Yes, so I buy mine cost. I don't know if you guys have it in Canada, but here there's a really good brand at Costco that's like it says it's sustainably caught and it's like what is it? It's in olive oil. So I mean that's the one that I buy. I haven't. There are some in glass. If you can find that, that's I guess better, but it's not always accessible, so that's kind of the one that I buy. So yeah, sardines most of the time come in cans, or canned. I
Mm.
don't know if you have
And that's
anything.
fine as long. No, yeah, it's normally canned.
Yeah,
Just make
and
sure that
then
it's not and make sure it's not in a seed oil like with olive
that's
oil
yeah. So
or
yeah, mine yeah,
yeah,
the one that I get is it's olive oil, and most
yeah.
Costco's I think they have it. That's kind of where I get it, but the Whole Foods and kind of a lot of other health food stores also have different other options of
Yeah,
those, and
yeah. So
then
just make sure it's like either olive oil, sesame oil, avocado oil, or water. Like don't get anything that's in sunflower oil or any of the seed vegetable oils.
yeah, so and then they okay, someone had responded. So can you
And
eat codfish? Is it okay to eat codfish every day? And I don't think it is personally. Like a few times, maybe I think maybe once or twice a week, because cod is kind of like also a bigger fish, so it is higher in toxins even compared to salmon. I do eat it very rarely though. For me, like it's not like something I consume like salmon every week, you know. But I don't know if you have anything to say.
Yeah, I don't know about the toxin side, but in terms of nutrition, if you're not getting, like, let's say if you're fasting and you're allowing fish in your diet and you're not getting protein from any other source, I say have it every day.
Okay.
I'm for you getting proper protein other than soy. Because like people
Yes.
who just eat like tofu during fasting, tofu's not good.
Yeah. Someone has asked about us to talk about vegan diets, but I feel like that would be more appropriate for a different talk, I would say, because I feel like there's so much to say about that. Um, so
Yeah.
I feel like I want us to touch on like some of the other food items or like things that we wanted to talk about so that we can give you guys the information in that regard today, and that we can talk about different types of diets that people have and the benefits, whatever the pros and cons in a different life, if that's of interest to you guys, I would say.
The only thing I would add to that is if you are able to consume clean animal products, I personally do not think that going vegan is the best way for our health. If you're able to consume grass-fed, pasture-raised animal products. If you're not able to
Mm-hmm.
do that, then I don't think I don't I that's where I'm stuck. Like that's where I can't really say go ahead and eat conventional meat. I think then if you're eating organic produce and vegetables, then maybe that's a better route than you eating antibiotic injected and growth hormone injected animal products. That's the only thing I'm gonna say about vegan diets
Okay,
at this point.
there's like two more questions we need to address and then we'll move on. So one question is, I guess we've already touched
Organic
on this.
labeling.
Yeah, we've already touched on at least the which fish are good to eat every day. We've kind of said like salmon and sardines, and some wild caught white fish are like they're good to eat every day. I think we've already addressed that, but I just want to repeat since it was asked. So do you want to try to take that one, or should I start taking it
The
and then?
organic labeling
Yeah.
in North America, they cannot label organic, and like if it says certified organic, then it's certified organic. I know for sure that's how it is here. Like they
Yeah.
can't be fed GMO. They're saying it's certified organic, then it's organic. You're safe.
Yeah, it is. But sometimes the problem happens, I think, a lot more with grains, but sometimes when the food is imported, I've heard some instances where they'll actually label something that's not organic. But we don't really have, but if like for the most part, if it's grown, I guess, closer and closer proximity to the US, that's um the likelihood that it's organic is like when it's labeled organic is high. But that's something like we kind of have to, what is it, keep an eye on, just because like these companies are always lobbying and whatever, like for GMO foods and things like that to be labeled organic. Like one thing I try to avoid, but which is like almost impossible, is like if you guys have seen like seedless watermelons, seedless grapes and whatnot, they're labeled organic because they're grown organically, but then um, fruits are supposed to be they're supposed to be seeded, and like the seeds have actually benefits to our health, and obviously like that's they're in their natural state. But at least here I have not been able to find like seeded grapes anywhere. So like there are little things where the more you kind of are, I guess, progressing in your journey, where you want to pay more attention to. But I would say to start with, for the most part, organic means organic and it's safe. So like they have rules and regulations, at least the USDA organic, like they have those. But even with the labels, like, so non-GMO does not mean organic, because a lot of people sometimes think that it's not genetically modified, but it can still be grown with pesticides and be labeled non-GMO. So kind of understanding those kind of the meaning behind those labels is also helpful for us to make better choices, because sometimes it can be all confusing. But
Yeah, and because people don't know their labels. That's the like GMO. GMO is actually there's only a few crops that are GMO, like corn,
mhm.
wheat, cotton, soy. Like those are the ones I can think of. I'm sure the cottonseed. Oh, I've said cotton, I think. there's only a few things that are GMO. So if they're labeling a like, I don't know, some strawberries non-GMO, then
Oh,
strawberries were never
there are
GMO.
GMO. Yeah, no, you're right. Strawberries are not, but there are actually tomatoes that are GMO. There are potatoes, there are papayas. Like there are a ton of, when it comes to produce, there are quite a bit actually that are GMOs, and but they're not a lot. So like it's
Yeah,
a list that you can, look at and be like, okay, like these
yeah,
are
it's
GMOs.
such a
So
small list.
yeah, and all that stuff again, like if that's something that you guys are interested in, maybe me and Kalu can work on like a resource where we can like put down things so that people can have easy access to it. But yeah, like again, it's not a lot of things. But I think it's more so maybe for like things that are processed and things like that. Like you kind of want to know if you're, because processed foods have a lot of additives and stuff, and without them, when they say it's non-GMO, at least like genetically modified grains or something like that is not in it. But
Yeah.
that's kind of it. So should we move on to, what do you think we should move on to?
We can do eggs,
Yeah.
because I know that the label can be so confusing, because I used to be so confused as well.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to eggs, you'll see like regular conventional eggs, and then there is free range,
Yeah.
or cage free, and then pasture raised, right? So
Mm-hmm.
cage free can basically mean that they are not individually caged. They could
Mm-hmm.
still be caged with, like, a big fence, and
Mm-hmm.
indoor. And they can be indoor, and they can be fenced in a basically in like a little barn, and be considered cage free. But they're just able to touch each other. It doesn't mean they're healthy. Like they probably can't even stand properly at that point, but they're still considered cage free. Free range only means that they have access to, like, outdoors, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean they're actually out there. It means they have access, but they might not be going out, or they might be going out for, like, I don't know, 10 minutes a day, and they can still label that as cage free, free range.
Mm-hmm.
Pasture raised is when they're actually raised on pasture.
Mm-hmm.
So they're out there scratching on the ground, eating their worms, eating the grass or whatever it is. And that's the kind of eggs that you want.
Mm-hmm.
In Toronto, it's impossible, literally, to find pasture raised eggs at, like, stores. There was one store that used to carry it, and they stopped before COVID. And that's when I started looking for other sources, and I found a farm, and I get my eggs from a farm. In
Okay.
terms of health food stores, they only have free range. They don't have pasture
Oh
raised.
wow.
Like, it's literally impossible. I don't know how it is in Utah, but I know it's not accessible. I get that, but it's much better for our health.
Mm-hmm.
It's higher in omega-3, choline, vitamin E, vitamin A, which are all great, like, brain building vitamins. And it tastes better. The yolk is a lot more orange. It's like Ethiopian, like, the eggs. Yeah, Yemendino, Yabashadoro,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which, by the way, I found out is now Siddis Burbankulal, and I'm just like, what?
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't asked.
Yeah.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah. And so, like, it's better for us, but I know it's hard. I mean, here I know it's hard. I don't know how
In
accessible
the
it is
US,
there.
I mean, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but if you have access to a Whole Foods or kind of like a Sprouts or any of those type of stores, there is a brand called Vital Farms. It's like they do have pasture raised eggs now, more accessible to
Okay.
like the. So for me, I would say obviously it's easier to find local if you can. Here we have both, like at least the stores we go to, they have kind of local pasture raised brands, smaller ones, and then they have the Vital Farms ones. So like we kind of go for those, like whichever one is available. So that's kind of what, like at least in terms of the pasture raised, that's kind of I guess the thing. And then even in terms of toxins, again, like the chickens that are raised in those kind of environments, like in a cage, or really like even cage free, which are like raised in very small quarters. Again, they're like, they put antibiotics in them to like make them grow very quickly. Again, they're eating the GMO soy grain feed, and they're not really their diet is not diverse or natural, so both nutritionally and in terms of toxins. And also stress. I think maybe that's what we didn't talk about, is stress, because when animals are raised in kind of the industrial type of farming, it's very like, it stresses their body, and stress actually physically manifests, it affects the way their biology and how their meat, or, the products we get from them are. So like that's another thing where when you buy, whatever conventional or industrially farmed kind of chickens or eggs or, meat, that's also another addition to like how it affects, the quality of what we're getting, and also how it affects our health as well.
I was actually gonna.
Yeah, go ahead.
We will. I was gonna read you all a little excerpt from a book that is, but I think first I don't think we have that kind of time. I will recommend this book though, if you're interested in, whoops, it's upside down. Can you read that? I think it's gonna be The End of Food.
The End of Food, okay. I haven't read it, but
you haven't read it. Yeah, so there's an excerpt that explains how like chicken laying eggs are brought up, and it's just like they debeak them over and over and over so that they don't peck onto the because it's a reflex for them. Because they peck on the ground, right? And because they don't want them to peck, even though like why can't they just freely peck? Like honestly,
well, but I mean, if it's like, what is it? If it's like cement or whatever, yeah, right? Yeah, because if they're caged, I don't think they even have access to like soil.
Pecking. Yeah, but like even whatever it is, if it's really just a reflex.
Question. Yeah. So they said, does pasture raised egg has to be organic too?
Pasture raised is technically, I mean, they're supplementing their feed, but they're not going to label as organic pasture raised. I have not seen that. That's what you would want. You would ideally want them to make sure that whatever they're supplementing is not GMO. But I actually speak to the farm where I get my eggs, and I ask them what they're being fed, and I make sure that they're not being fed soy, and I make sure that it's not like GMO grains, and it's organic. They're not labeled. I haven't seen eggs that are labeled as organic and pasture raised.
So here they are labeled. The Vital Farms ones have options. So there's one that says just pasture raised. There's one that says pasture raised non-GMO, and there is a pasture raised organic. So for me, if I'm buying them, I'm buying the pasture raised organic, because when they're supplementing them, then that means they're supplementing them with organic grains and not like GMO grains. So the other one that doesn't have any label, they are supplementing with GMO grains, and then the non-GMO one, they're supplementing with non-GMO grains, but obviously non-GMO can mean, like I told you guys, it doesn't mean organic, so they can still use pesticide. So I avoid that to the best of my abilities. But if you're getting it from a smaller place, again, USDA organic labeling is very expensive, so small farmers usually can't afford that. So for me, like at least at the farmers market, I would ask them, and they actually tell you the truth of exactly what they're feeding them, because again, they don't gain much by lying to you, at least for the most part. So that's kind of
so like I haven't seen anything that's been labeled both, but if you see it, then pick up organic pasture raised.
And I guess like for people maybe that are in Ethiopia, it's like you guys are right, Ethiopia has accepted GMOs. I don't think it's like in the markets yet to have like GMO foods. However, they do use pesticides. So even in Ethiopia now, we are going to we're gonna need to know who's growing our food, because for me, I honestly prefer, like, if I was there, I don't know if they exist anymore. It's been like 3 years since I was there. Good. The gullit, like the small, the women that sell in small batches and stuff, I would prefer going to those and getting it, because I'm pretty sure they're not using any of those heavy pesticides, but I know that's not accessible for everyone right now. But yeah, that's something, even living in Ethiopia, that's something we really have to think about, is really where our food is coming from right now, because right now pesticides are being used everywhere and some of it is imported. I've heard they import chicken from Brazil, especially if you're eating at a restaurant. So those are things you want to watch out for if you're in Ethiopia. Um,
Yeah.
but do you want us to move on to something else? Because
what else is there?
we've talked about, I guess someone had asked us about oils.
Yes, oils. So oils, I had made a post about it, which I can share after this as well, just in case I forget anything. But oils that are vegetable or seed-based are quite inflammatory. So they lead to chronic health like conditions, heart problems, diabetes, hypertension. So we should avoid canola oil,
Corn oil.
Corn oil, canola oil, corn oil, grapeseed oil. What else
Soybean
do most
oil.
Habesha people? Do Habesha people actually use that? I've never even heard of anybody using it.
I don't think so. I think it's mostly corn, vegetable oils, and
Canola.
whatever is labeled vegetables, and canola and corn. A lot of people use corn.
Corn,
And
okay.
sunflower oil.
Sunflower,
Yeah,
just
that's what
vegetable
a
and
lot
seed
of.
oils are not made to be cooked because when you're cooking them, they go rancid.
Mm-hmm.
They
Can you
they
explain what
create
that
free
means for people?
they create free
Rancid.
radicals, which then goes into your body and can lead to even cancer. So it's toxic. Just don't. It's not meant to be heated. If you're going to be putting it in like a salad, even though it's not ideal that you eat these oils, I mean, it's better, but you're not putting canola oil in a salad. We know that you're cooking it. So don't cook canola oil. Instead, use butter, malati, even kabe.
Mm-hmm.
You can use coconut oil, avocado oil, and even olive
Mm-hmm.
oil is okay as long as you're not heating it too much. So if you're going to be cooking over medium, like medium more than medium, like if it's medium low or medium, you're okay. But if you're going to be like frying or going above like that medium range, then you want to avoid olive oil as
Olive
well.
oil. Mm-hmm.
Sesame oil is okay as well. And if it's
Someone asked
sustainably
peanut oil.
peanut oil, no, it's not good.
For
It's
frying, I've heard it's a better oil than canola. I guess depending on where it's
I
sourced.
think anything other than maybe corn and soybean is better than canola, but I still would not say to use peanut oil. If it's sourced properly, uh, palm palm oil.
Palm oil.
Palm oil is good if it's sourced properly, but if it's sourced with if it's extracted through heat, then not so much. But if it's like a cold pressed, and that's the other thing, when you're choosing your oil, it's important that you look for cold pressed because if they're extracting it through heat or like chemicals, I don't know. You have no idea what they're doing nowadays to process these oils. Just try to get like cold pressed, which is in its most natural form. They're literally just pressing it for the oil to come out. Right? Imagine how much
Mm-hmm.
work it takes to get oil out of a canola. If any of you know what canola looks like, it's basically like a little yellow flower. They're getting oil
Mm-hmm.
from that. You know how much processing it takes. By the time you're cooking with that, it's wrecking havoc.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I guess the other ones are, so corn and soybean and even canola actually are all for the most part GMOs.
GMO.
When for oil sourcing. But I know, for example, in Ethiopia there's such a limitation, and like olive oil is not affordable for like even people who are like living in a very, what is it, economically well off. It's extremely expensive. So my trick for when I cannot find, if I'm in a place where I cannot find like olive oil or maybe avocado oil or coconut oil to cook with, first of all, try to make sure maybe like if you can find a non-GMO canola oil. But what I do is I will saute with water and put the oil at the end, because like, like I said, the oils go rancid. They're extremely like inflammatory. So for me, even with olive oil, what I do is like when I know I'm cooking, let's say like, dinnerchot or whatever, like some Ethiopian food, and I really need like, to add the oil and if I don't have access to like avocado oil or whatever, I will saute everything with water. And then once it's done, I'll add olive oil on top. So that's kind of a little trick I can suggest to people because I know not everyone can have access. But again, like corn, soybean, and canola, to the best of your abilities, avoid them because they're GMO and they're like extremely, extremely processed, inflammatory, and highly toxic. But then one more thing I want to mention about olive oil is also our olive oil. It's best if we know where it comes from because a lot of olive oil is actually adulterated with like vegetable oils. So they'll say like, oh, pure olive oil or whatever. But if you have access to a Costco, I recently learned actually one of the purest olive oils is the Kirkland brand. Like olive oil is actually like pure olive oil. I think it's the organic one. It's ideal if your oil comes in a glass bottle, but you know what? Like if it's pure, I'll take it in a plastic bottle or anything. So that's
Even
kind
the
of
glass bottle one, it goes on sale a lot at our Costco. I don't know about yours. Do you guys have the yellow, like it's like Tanzania? Like
no, I
the
have.
yellow, the organic, like I think there's only two organic olive oils at Costco locally here.
Oh, I don't.
And one of
I've
them is
never seen
Kirkland,
that
and
one, but yeah,
yeah,
I
but
usually buy the Kirkland one.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I already
Avocado,
said like,
yes, it's good.
yeah, I
Avocado
already
is good
said.
for cooking.
Yeah, and I mean, I've kind of, I guess, talked about like what I would do for shorot or whatever. Like I would do olive oil or avocado oil.
Or
Um,
curry. If you can eat curry.
yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, that's the best. What
The
about,
best.
okay, that's a really, really good question actually.
I don't
So
know what that
the
spray oil
spray
is, the
one.
1 calorie.
So the spray ones are, hold on, where is it? So I don't know
Are
what
they,
the
what kind of
one
oil?
calorie spray ones is, but this, if you guys are familiar with what is it? The spray kind of like things that you can put, I guess, when you're kind of, I don't know, sauteing something, or I don't know, like a lot of people use them, like they like them because they're accessible, but there's something called propellers, so they put these chemicals to actually propel the oil up to for it to spray for you. So if you're trying to buy that, make sure you're buying propeller free spray oils because there's a ton of chemicals they add to push the oil up through that tube and make it, yeah, you're right. I think for pancakes and stuff, a lot of people use that. So I say like that's,
I
I
think
guess,
there's an
another tip.
avocado oil version though. Yeah,
No,
yeah, someone
no,
just said
yeah,
that.
you want to use the obviously you want to use avocado oil, coconut oil, or olive oil, but even with those, make sure like you see the labels
They're
are
propeller
propeller
free. Yeah.
free. Yes. So that's kind of when you buy
Yeah, because
oil,
I've
you
seen
just
avocado.
think about it.
I've never used that. I've never even picked one up to look at the ingredients.
Yeah, but
But
someone was
I had
asking
to look.
earlier, I don't know if they got to see it again, like I propeller, what I was saying was propeller free is what you look for if you're looking for the sprays is what I was saying. Um
Yeah, I've
yeah.
never looked at a spray, like the ingredients on a spray. I make my own spray. You know those little bottles that you buy? I literally put my oil
Mm-hmm.
in there and I just I
I
just
know. I
spray it
think
on.
that's better. Yeah, I don't. I actually don't buy them. Like, but I've seen like that's something that I've learned that if someone wants to buy them, that I guess they should just um look for.
Make sure it's propeller free. Yeah.
Yeah,
But you could probably save yourself some money and just make your own spray. I mean, it's not gonna spray out as like sheerly as one of those, I'm
exactly. But
sure,
I think yeah.
but you can still, I mean, the whole point is
Oh,
just to
someone
get
yeah. Someone had asked for ghee butter. What's the benefit of ghee butter?
ghee is basically cooked away. It's just
I know.
not
Yeah,
spiced, but it's
it's
clarified butter, which
clarifying.
is
Yeah.
what we are doing when we're preparing our kebab. So the benefit is that you're removing the lactose, so you're less likely to react to it if you're lactose intolerant. And by doing that, you're actually allowing the butter to be heated at a much higher temperature and not create free radicals when you do that. So it doesn't go rancid when you do that. Yeah, so those are the benefits. But again, you should try to make sure that it's grass-fed and not grain-fed.
Yeah. Metal.
Yeah, so I guess that's the only other thing we've left off was water. If you wanted to just say anything about that.
I guess
Otherwise, I
because
think we're
someone
done.
has asked us, yeah. So does it have to be organic or cold pressed oils? I think you already had addressed that, Mama. Okay, I'm
Ideally,
almost done.
organic and cold pressed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you should be looking for. Cold pressed literally just tells you hasn't been processed. It means it was just pressed to release the oil. Well, if it's,
Yeah.
Unrefined means basically the same thing. Unrefined means that it's
Hold on,
like
I
done
got
in the
it
most
then.
natural state. Okay. Oh my God, you're up at 3:30 a.m. to listen to this? That's insane. Thank you. But sleep is also important, as important as eating grass-fed, pasture-raised,
Yes.
and organic food.
Oh no, I said someone had asked what is the best butter, so
the best butter,
yeah.
grass-fed, organic, or just grass-fed if it's just or grass-fed. But if you're eating something that's like if they're being supplemented with grains, which they shouldn't be, because ruminant animals are not made to be eating grains, but if they are, then make sure the grains are also organic.
Yeah.
But ideally, just grass-fed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
mean,
so
I guess
back to
here
the
they have, I guess for options, because for me, until you shared actually the California one, which I'm so happy about, because I can actually buy it, like they actually ship, I guess across the US, and
they
maybe you
ship
can
everywhere.
share, yeah,
Yeah,
across the
I'll
US.
share that because their
Yeah.
prices are amazing. You have no idea how
They're
much I pay
amazing,
for
yeah, and
butter.
it's like it's raw. So, because for me, I
Yeah,
use the what is it? There's an Irish butter. What is it called? Kerrygold, because that's the best one I can find. They
they're
don't
saying
have other.
Kerrygold is not real. They're saying Kerrygold is not really grass-fed.
It's only,
There's
I
been
mean, it's only
there's been so much
partly grass
controversy.
fed. I know it's not
Yeah,
100% grass fed, but
yeah,
that, I mean, I know that, but that's like, if you want grass fed, that's the closest you can find, I guess,
yeah.
unless you buy like the Whole Foods organic or whatever. But I'm really glad they have that
I didn't know they shipped
option.
everywhere. I will
That's
link
what it,
that.
yeah, at least in the US, they do ship. So, okay. You
Yeah, and
okay?
California, if you live in California, you are so lucky because I mean, I'm sure it's other states too. I think Utah's the same, but raw milk is actually regulated. So you can
Yeah,
actually
it is.
find it in store. And those farmers are actually, the law is actually ensuring that that raw milk is clean. Here in Canada, it's illegal to get raw milk. I actually get my raw milk from the back of a van, like I'm getting drugs. Like it's really like insane. But you do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
But because I am not the one milking that cow, and because someone had asked that, and I had looked at it, and I told myself I would get back to it, because I'm not the one milking that cow, nor is it a regulated state where I know that there's laws and regulations in place to make sure that those udders are cleaned properly before they're milked and everything. Even though I trust my farmer, I still heat it a little bit. Like, I heat it. I don't let it boil, but I heat it before I give it to my
Yeah,
child. If you do
that's
not
what
feel,
we do too, yeah. So I mean for us,
yeah,
like
so
if we do try or something, we'll boil it, but for the most part, like when I give it to my daughter, which she rarely drinks because she's still breastfeeding, but like we'll warm it a little bit,
yeah.
and then give it to her. Yeah.
But if you live in a regulated state, I don't
You
think you
can
have to
drink it
worry.
cold.
You can drink it
Yeah, for
cold.
us
Like,
actually, yeah, that's true. You don't have to worry, yeah, because actually there was one
yeah,
time where I went to get milk and they said they didn't have it because it failed the test. So like
yeah,
they won't put it on the shelf unless like
yeah,
it's all the tests
yeah,
are good. But we
yeah.
can
Which
talk
is
about sorry guys, this is mom life.
okay.
We can talk about Oh,
Where do you get grass-fed butter?
Ali will share
I'll I'll
the link
share
of
I'll
the.
share the I'll share the Instagram account. You can just go to their shop and check it out. But they had a I don't know if it was a sale that was going on
Yeah,
at
they
one
had a
point, but
Black Friday sale that was amazing, but I had so
their
much water, so I
prices
didn't
were,
actually get it.
and it's a regulated state, so you know that
Yeah,
raw milk
yeah.
that was
So,
used to make that butter is legit.
okay, there you go.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, Betty, it's the same thing in Canada. It's illegal. Everything is pasteurized. I had to like start harassing people to find out what their sources was. And I told you I literally get it from a van. I pick it up from a van every week, once a week. But gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I lived in the UK for a year, but I don't know anything or anyone that could help. um, what was
Yeah.
I? Yeah, water. So water, believe it or not, actually has like residues of antibiotics in it, like acid from acid rain, like so many things. And so I've gone through so many different. I have a filter in my fridge, and I was relying on that when I was pregnant, and even the majority of um, 2019. And then at the beginning of this year, right around COVID, I started getting my water from a health food store that did reverse osmosis, that had like a reverse osmosis pump, and so I used to get my filtered water from there. But what the thing is with reverse osmosis is you are extracting, like you're filtering everything, but you're leaving the acid. So then what happens to that water is it's actually quite acidic, and you want something that's more alkaline than acidic. So you would have to either remineralize it with some sort of magnesium and calcium, or um, drink some other source of water. So now I know you guys are all going to think I'm crazy. Even my husband thinks I'm crazy. Everybody that knows me thinks I'm crazy. But I drink spring water. So I travel 45 minutes from here to find a
Oh
spring.
wow.
Like that's Yemen Choha, to find a
Yeah.
spring. And I like that just has water, just doesn't blow me fast. And I go and I fill bottles and bottles of like big jugs of water. And I go once a month. And that's where we get our drinking water. So, there's so
So
many
do you
different ways of
filter it?
filtering. No,
Do you filter it after? No?
no. It comes from the like how many layers below ground, right? So it's naturally filtered as it comes out.
Yeah.
And there's a website called findaspring.com for the
Really?
US and Canada. Yeah, for the
Oh, I
US and
guess you should
Canada.
share that with us too, like, cause for people who don't have
Yeah.
access.
Yeah, so you can see where there's the closest spring to you. For me, it was quite far, but it's actually really close to where I get my eggs. So we go once a month and we get our eggs and our water.
So, like, how much do you get like, how much water do you get, like,
We we get, I don't even know how many liters those things are. I'll have to check. But it's mostly me and my baby that drink it. My husband's like, yeah, bitch, and I'll just drink the filtered water from the fridge. But
So
for me and
that's
my
actually
baby.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean there is actually EW, at least if you live in the US, EWG has just kind of what actually the state tests for, and it shows you like how like tap water is so contaminated. Because I was one of those
Yeah.
people who was like, tap water is fine. Like, what are you talking about?
But bottled is the
But it's
same.
not, it's
Bottled and
really
tap
not. It
is,
has a lot of chemicals. I mean, depending on where you live, like specific, even like the specific neighborhood you live, if like, there's like industries, factories, like all those things, like, um, they matter. And I've also visited a treatment plant before when I was doing my master's, in Minnesota. And so they pretty much circle back the wastewater into the drinking water.
yep, yep. So you're
And
getting all those
so I mean,
antibiotics and everything.
water is such a big topic. So that's why I was kind of like hesitant for us to touch on it. But I mean, if people are really interested, we can do something
Yeah,
else
we
on
can
it.
do
But
another.
yeah, like
Yeah.
there are websites where you can go look for the contaminants. So one thing, at least for us, what we did is here, like the water is very like it's hard water, and even like if you wanted to drink the tap water, you cannot. It tastes like really bad, even in terms of taste, you know, leave alone the toxicity and everything. So we use, yeah, I'm not done. Oh, she, hold on, let me give her away. Daddy, let's go, Daddy.
Okay.
Daddy said, come. Make kujalish, Daddy Fiji.
Okay, take her. I'm gonna talk and then come back. You can come back. You wanna go?
Okay, let me just give her back. And then
so water, we can do a whole other live on this if you are all interested. There's so many different ways of like filtering. There, like from what I've seen, like I said, I drink my water from a spring now because I find that's the best if you can find it, because that's live water, it's alkaline. You know, and you know what I find is that I'm satiated so quickly. Like I used to drink like 8 cups of water and still want more. With this spring water, I'm satiated. Like I can tell that there's so much more minerals in there because I don't like I drink a little bit and I'm perfectly fine. And it doesn't impact my like, you know how, okay, maybe this is a little TMI, but normally if you see you pee and your pee is like yellow, then you're not getting enough water. But even drinking less water, my pee is still like clear. So I don't know. Like I feel like there's just spring water.
There's definitely there's definitely a lot of truth to that actually, because so for us we do the reverse osmosis. We have a reverse osmosis filter, but we learned the hard way that, like you said, you have to remineralize because reverse osmosis strips like toxic chemicals and the minerals of the water, so the water is empty. So again, like she said, it doesn't quench your thirst as quickly as, like, you know, spring water. But also, like, we were like so depleted from the minerals, we were like so tired, and we were just trying to wonder like right after we moved here, like, what is going on, because we're so tired, like we cannot figure out. And then I learned in a course that I'm taking that, like, if you're not remineralizing your water, you're not getting any minerals. So I'm gonna look at that and see the find the spring one, and try to like get it. I'm sure my husband will also think I'm crazy. But actually, if you guys haven't watched
people line up, like,
oh really?
How many? Yeah. I'm like,
oh my God, that's incredible. No, you have to get us a video, Kalgi, so that like... you have to get us a video, because this is some some next level stuff. No, again, I mean, pictures, you do want,
but not a video.
Yeah, you
next
do
time
want
I'll go and get a video.
Some sort of filtered water. So like there are different types of filters. Obviously, there's the reverse osmosis. There's like a kind of another popular one called Berkey. So
good.
No, Berkey, but Berkey does not remove fluoride. So for me, that's my issue of why I went with the reverse osmosis. But again, if you can find spring water, that is the best one with like all the minerals.
I'll send you guys the link. Yeah.
Yeah, with the minerals and everything, because I actually did a live with a naturopathic doctor who like specializes in kidney disease last time, and one of the things we talked about is like what kind of water people even with kidney disease should drink, and she was suggesting spring water, because she said with reverse osmosis, because it doesn't have those minerals, like you know you're not getting like you lose a lot more water too, because you don't have the minerals to kind of just, I guess, go distribute to different parts of your bodies. So I don't know, that's kind of, I guess, what I have for water. But definitely avoid drinking tap water and bottled water, because a lot of the things, like, a lot of people don't know about. I think most bottled waters are like just reverse osmosis, I think, is for the most part. But like there's so many YouTube videos you guys can look at where people have tested the pH levels. And we actually have a little a little testing kit too. This one only tests for particles, and maybe I can do a small IGTV video demonstrating like what the tap water looks like, and then what like our filtered water, and then with the reverse osmosis there's the water, like the dirty water that gets dumped, and what like that kind of the levels to show you guys. It would be kind of cool. So it's a very cheap kind of meters, but it doesn't tell you what's in it and what like chemicals are there. It just tells you how many like particles there are, and there's like some there's standards of like what level it should be and what level is toxic. But with bottled water, the issue is like with the plastics, a lot of the plastics like microplastics get into the water. So obviously like you're not just drinking water, it's not just water, you're drinking a lot of other chemicals and particles along with it. So there are some good bottled waters if you run out of option. But I would say for the most part, a lot of Habeshas I know like they go to Costco and buy like the bottled water, and that's kind of what they rely on. So I would advise against that if you have access to it. But water for me personally in my health journey is not something I addressed right away because filters are very expensive and I had no idea those springs existed. So
free water, free healthy water.
Yeah, one of those. It was one of the last the last things I addressed. But what do I use to remineralize my water? That's a very good question.
Do you use magnesium bicarbonate or do you buy like
No, I actually buy, it's called concentrates. They call it here in Utah like it's actually like it's minerals from like the Salt Lake. If you guys have heard of the Salt Lake, it's kind of like there's a lot of there's a salt called real salt. Maybe people like have heard of it. So that's where it comes from. It comes from here. So the same place where they're getting the salt is where they get those minerals, because that salt is like it's real salt because it's full of minerals. So I'll do either those, there's some drops, I'll either do the drops or I'll do the actual salt itself because it's still full of minerals. But you really, really need the minerals, because I actually even read something recently where when you don't have when you don't have magnesium specifically in your water, you cannot get rid of like toxins like aluminum and things like that. So it's very important. I'm not familiar with the Berkey fluoride and arsenic filters, but I've heard people adding the fluoride filter, and the Berkey works for them really well. But there are a ton of filters. I mean, it's really it really takes doing your own research, because I don't want to tell you like this is the best or this is not. So
I think if you have the money, it's a big investment. But I hear the pristine filters are really good. They remineralize. They remineralize.
Oh, I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. So it's supposed to be top notch, but it's expensive. Or just drink spring water.
Yeah, that's true. Spring water is the best. No, I don't mean pink salt. I don't know if pink salt might have the minerals too, but this is called Redmond real salt is what it's called, and I can share. I guess if you guys.
Salt is like a whole new topic.
Yeah, we'll probably have to do like a different one. I mean, it seems like people really enjoyed our conversation, so we can do another one when sometime. Because that's a different thing. What do you think of? Wait, is if water is not good, tap water I believe is not good. So what water is healthy to drink? So filtered. So spring water, if you can find it, then the next step would be filtered water. But you really have to know what kind of filters, because those whatever Brita filters, they're not doing anything. And
you need to filter out a lot more than just I think it's like fluoride. You need to filter out chlorine. You need to filter out arsenic, heavy metals.
Yeah, chromium, a ton of heavy metals, and then there are pharmaceuticals too, guys. Like there's our birth controls, whatever. Like
because whatever we're taking, whatever we're taking, and goes into our sewer system comes back to us, right? So there's so many things that need to be filtered out. And so like the reverse osmosis or the carbon filters are good, but you have to make sure you remineralize because it makes the water acidic. Apart from that, spring water I would say is my number one choice if you can find a spring water well near you. And I'll share the website. So for that specific spring, check for like what people are saying under there, because some people have actually tested these waters. Like they've gone out there and using kits to test the water. So that's a little bit more reassuring.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
but it's literally
No.
being taken all the way from like how many layers of like crater of whatever like to come up. So it's being filtered out as it's on its way up, and it doesn't have any acid rain. It doesn't have pharmaceuticals. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like alive. Like the water is literally alive. It's full of minerals, and so that's
Yeah.
the best. And if you can find a spring,
Yeah, so
it's
someone
literally
had asked,
findaspring.com. It's one
okay,
find a spring one
there's,
word.com.
so someone asked, I think it's Cagnin or some cannon water. I don't know I've heard of
I don't
it,
know what
but
that is.
I can't speak to it because I don't know the benefits or the detail of it. But I've heard a lot of people say like it's really good water. And
Yeah,
then
I don't
which brand do you use for RO filter? I use the Aqua True. So someone said,
there's
how
what
about
kind of
spring water from
bottle.
the store, I guess. Yeah.
So like bottled spring water, I don't know. I mean, it's still bottled, and if it's true
Yeah.
spring water, then okay. But I don't.
Yeah, and it's quite expensive because I mean the ones that come, I think, from France and stuff are the ones I've seen with the actual spring water. Um, but they're still bottled and you're getting the what is it, the
Microplastic.
microplastics. But if you don't have a choice, like if you don't have any other choice, then that probably is the way to go. Um, and there are so many other things like for Ethiopia, like at least for people in Ethiopia, maybe like in the future I can talk about it. There's something like moringa seeds actually like can filter water. It's incredible. They remove fluoride, heavy metals, and all that stuff. I actually have a small tiny video of it on my page. If you guys scroll down to like kind of the bottom, I guess kind of the beginning of my page. But a lot of people use plastic bottles because the trick is you have to let it sit in the sun to kind of so it works in in synergy with the sun. But a lot of people put it with the plastic, and that's a no-no because plastic, when it's heated, it's leaching a ton of chemicals into the water. But obviously, like not a lot of people have, some of these things, like these experiments were done in like some of the most rural places. So like people did not have access to glass bottles. But for me, if I don't have options like that, like if you can't find a clean spring water in Ethiopia, then that's like there are options. There's always options. It's just like we just have to search for them. We just have to search for we just have to do our research to know options because sometimes we can feel like, oh, I'm in this place and I'm not gonna have access. But something that I've learned is like, what is it? When there's a will, there's a way. Like if you're really determined to find that or to make that change, like you can make it happen. Like we can find that solution wherever we are.
Yeah, I am witness to that. Spring water and raw milk in Canada.
And I don't know if
But
people have any other questions. If they
anything we may have missed, it was hard to catch on to questions as we spoke.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know if she's still here, but Mimi, yeah, I think you asked me how Mizan is doing. She's good. She's big right now, as I don't know if you got to see her. No, I was just
Oh
saying,
no.
yeah, no, I was just saying, like I said, if people enjoyed it or if they have any other questions, they can DM us or, let us know, and we can
Yeah.
come up with a um different topic or topics or addressing the questions they have. And even if we can't do
Yeah.
a lives, I like them because they're very interactive. But if even if we can't do a live, we can do something on recorded, where we can discuss like some of your questions that you can send us ahead of time. But um
This
yeah,
is good. Guys, this is my
yeah, I
first
enjoyed
live
it.
and I was so nervous in the beginning, but it was good.
No, it's not that bad. Once you do it, especially when you're doing with someone else, it's so much easier because um
Yeah. You're not
you're
just
not
talking
by
to yourself.
yourself. I used to do
Yeah,
them alone, and that was super nerve-wracking. But
I can
um
imagine.
yeah, no, it's enjoyable because it's interactive, and I feel like you learn a lot because you can ask questions and stuff.
And if you haven't seen Sustainable, what is it? sacred cow is probably not showing anymore, like for free.
Yeah, anymore. I don't think so. Yeah,
but that's a
when
really
it
good
comes out,
documentary.
that's an amazing documentary. Yeah.
It shows you where our world is heading, and unfortunately, that's not the right route, and which is why we're probably going to end up having a whole bunch of fake food if we don't resist and stop
Yeah,
buying
especially
conventional.
I mean, there's hope for us in our country, so like that's what we really have to do. Because here, I mean, I don't know, I don't know if I can fight that fight, but at least for me, like I've been fighting against the GMOs in Ethiopia because I feel like we have hope because we have not polluted our systems, or we have not completely corrupted our systems, so we have hope to like catch it before we lose kind of all of that. And I think
because that's the other thing here. Like when you can go out and buy a farm and say you're gonna raise everything like organically, but if the farm next to you is using all of these pesticides, it actually like travels under the soil for how many kilometers? Like you can't even certify your land as organic because you have to be like 20 acres or something away from a farm that's using pesticides and fertilizers. But back
and
home, I
even
feel
with
we
the
still
what is
have
it,
hope.
the cross pollination too, it's very hard. And that's kind of, I mean, even in Ethiopia, a lot of experts were fighting and fighting. I don't think they're winning right now, but I know people are becoming more conscious of some of these things, and I know like people who are starting like kind of like sustainable type of agriculture or supporting, because that's what, like, sometimes it's really not, the solution is not like bringing in something new, it's really supporting like our own farmers, because they know exactly like to work in harmony with nature and just to like produce the best quality food instead of like bringing all these toxic chemicals and like these ideals that are not culturally, spiritually, and whatever way that don't define us. I feel like we just have to support them and support our own culture, and our own way of thinking, and just support nature. So that's kind of our hope for us. That's what we hope for. But then, again, like if you guys, it looks like you guys really enjoyed the conversation, so we can come back and talk about, maybe even like personal care products where people don't really pay much attention to, because I think a lot more people are aware of like food and like where it comes from, at least people who are here. So I think maybe, that's another conversation we can talk about.
Yeah, for sure. You'll probably have a lot more to do with that than I do, but I'll be here. Ethiopian agriculture and farming accepted and allowed to be distributed.
Accepted it and allowed it to be distributed. Yeah, I know that's the sad part, and that's, for me, that's something I was fighting against, and I'll continuously fight against, because it's not only like, it's not gonna feed the poor, guys, it's like gonna make the poor sick. And for me, I find that like it's very unethical to begin with, to give the choice of like someone who's in poverty to say, do you want to eat poison or do you want to starve? I'm like, why can't we do it the right way? Why can't we give people like healthy foods, natural foods that can actually like make them healthy, instead of doing that? But yeah, it is the Ethiopia issue. It's like we really gotta fight it.
It's about finances and the easier route. That's what it is. It's a capitalist system. I mean, we're all.
It is, yeah, and it's also land ownership, because these companies, once you give them access, I mean, you're done. Like they're owning you, they're owning
and farmers are
going
to take it. Yeah.
Exactly. And in India, a ton of farmers were committing suicide, because of these seeds and stuff. And obviously, this is such a complex issue, and I don't mean to go into like really, what is it?
Yeah,
deep,
I think we should.
Yeah, but this is such a passion of ours. We can be talking for hours. But even my baby is like, she's like, you need to come.
I know.
What
time is it? Yeah,
but 9, right? This is, I mean, something I'm very passionate about, whether it's here or especially in Ethiopia, because it's like a huge like justice and ethical and health everything issue. So we can talk about those things in the future. Thank you so much, guys, for coming and listening and interacting with us. We really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it, Kali. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and we'll keep this up. Just if I miss anything, I'll try to put it in the description section, whatever it is that I mentioned. So the spring water, butter, I don't remember what else.
And I mean, maybe like, we can touch base on like what we said tomorrow or something, and try to post the information for people.
Or just DM me, and then I'll make sure to add it if you remember something that I had mentioned or that Hiwote had mentioned. Just DM us.
Okay, sounds good.
We will,
Alrighty.
Have a good night.
Okay, bye guys.
And thank you all so much. Bye.
Hey.